Oh, Lisa's here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first Hangout for the Recruitment Technology Showcase. I think we've got a record number of people on this webinar forward stroke Hangout. Thank you for joining us. The discussion topic today is recruitment technology, recruitment trends, new technologies, how recruitment software might be able to help you as an agency, where things are going. I'm joined by a few guests today. I'm going to ask them to each introduce themselves from left to right at the bottom of the screen. If you want to join in the discussions, if you have any questions for any of these guests or comments, just tweet or post on Google Plus or post on LinkedIn under the hashtag RepNet. And I will try and get back to you. I'm getting some feedback from Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our... I think I'm getting a feedback here. Sorry, just sort that out. Sorry, Ghost in the Machine, folks. If people want, Lisa, we're gonna mute until we're ready to speak, and just to keep the feedback to a low, I think, and hopefully that works. Right. Yeah, so if you want to join in, email me, send something on Twitter, send something on Google+. I'll pass it on to everyone else. Right, can I start with you, Alan? If you want to introduce yourself, if you want to mention what you're going to be talking about at the showcase next Tuesday.
Hi, I'm Alan Whitford, AppTech Partnership and RCO.com, and I'll be running the debate on how recruitment technology implementation doesn't need to drain your time and money. I'm hopefully going to be ably supported in that by Lisa Jones and whoever else we can drag into the debate in the morning.
Okay, thank you. And Bill?
Ormond, University of Life.
Thank you. Is that all, Bill?
Yeah, I'm going to be hosting. I just thought it looked a bit like University Challenge. I'm going to be hosting the chat in the evening, which is going to be around the recruiting technology and some of the trends I'm seeing. I'm just back from. I've had 2 weeks in the US in San Francisco, so I've been in Moscow and been in and just been in Warsaw with True Events. So there's a lot happening at the moment. And the actual technology providers to the recruiting industry are really lagging behind in that respect. So I'm going to be chatting a little bit about that and a few ideas about where technology needs to go within the recruitment industry specifically.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Lisa, hello, welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Can you introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a bit about what you'll be talking about on Tuesday?
Well, basically, I have my own consultancy and I work with agencies and corporates across the planet, helping them with their web tech and social media projects. So recruitment technology, really, anything to help with sourcing, lead gen, but mainly I spend my time with the directors of firms, just helping them understand how to be strategic in their approach to technology as opposed to just spending money on it.
Okay, thank you. Louise, we'll go to you next. Louise, can you tell us a bit more about the event actually when we're around to you, Recruitment Technology Showcase?
Yeah, thanks, Louis. So I've been running these technology events for a while now. So I run the UK Recruiter website, and a lot of the things which recruiters talk to me about is using technology properly in 2 areas. One is CRM systems and getting the right database for them, but also about just technology in general, the minefield of all these technologies, what they should be using, specific products that they have questions about, and then also just technologies in general. So Tuesday's event is an opportunity for recruiters to come along and chat with providers to see what they're actually offering. And we do sort of a funky speed pitching session where recruiters can have short demos with each providers. And then we also have really great speakers at the event who are sharing their knowledge in a way which you'd normally pay for that sort of advice. So Lisa's consultancy, Alan's expertise, Bill's time, and then other speakers and presenters who we've got sharing their knowledge. And it's essentially a free event. You pay a deposit to register your place, but it's completely free to come along.
Still plenty of room, I suppose.
Yeah, there's still spaces.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Louise. And also we have Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Louis. Nearly forgot to take my mute off.
Don't worry. Can you introduce yourself and maybe tell us a bit about, from your recruiter, from your perspective, what you're looking for in technology and what issues are being raised at the moment?
I'm founder of the F10 group.
Oh, have we lost Mark? I think we've lost Mark. Pete, we'll move straight on to you. Sorry, same question really, as from an IT sort of manager position as well at a recruitment agency.
Yep, Peter Thompson. I'm head of IT for PSD Group. I've been working here for nearly 15 years now. So I spent a lot of that time looking at CRMs and recruitment-related software. I'm the guy that spends all the money that Lisa was talking about, and hopefully we try and do it in line with some strategy. But it is difficult, it's not easy. And we are being pushed on a lot of different fronts to provide solutions for the business. And sometimes we're driving the business to take up new solutions.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to the event next week to see where the different providers are going with their products and having a look at their roadmap.
Okay, thanks for joining us. And Jonathan, we have, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Louis from Collier Software. We supply software to agencies. And I'm joined by Jonathan, who's a proper techie from downstairs. Hi, Jonathan. Can you just introduce yourself briefly, please?
Hi, yeah, I'm John Broadley. I'm a developer here at Colleague Software. Just here to hear what other people say and see if we have any helpful report for you guys.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Right, so in terms of what we want to discuss first, I think, welcome back, Mark. Mark's on the F10 group, I think is about to say. In terms
I was talking
of
to myself for a bit there, Louis.
yeah, sorry, right. In terms of recruitment trends, then, should we start with that? What's new in 2013? What will recruiters going along to this event on Tuesday want to be looking for? What should they be on the lookout for? Does anyone want to jump in on that? Quite a general question, but I'm sure it'll take off.
Anything that enhances the recruitment process, anything that helps a business to differentiate.
Mute. I think it's very much about, there's lots of cool tools, lots of fabulous tools out there, but I think that directors are becoming more savvy now. I think these events that Louise runs hopefully gives time to people to not necessarily be sold to, but to look at the practical implications of stuffing this stuff into their business at the end of the day.
Okay.
Louis, the one thing I'm really looking for is I think very much most of the technology of what I see, either in terms of how it's built or how it's being used, is still very transactional. It's still very much about two things. One is data storage rather than data retrieval, and the other is not really around the relationship piece.
It's actually gone very quiet for me. Can anybody else hear the conversation?
I lost Bill for a second.
Okay, are you there, Bill?
Back in action, not sure what happened there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm not sure where you heard up to. Really, all I'm saying is that I'd like to see how technology is being used in particular. I think, and Peter would have a better opinion on this. Probably most recruiters are using about 20% of the capability of the technology they've already got. So I'd be interested in hearing from some of the participants there in terms of how they're using their technology. And the other piece is really around how we're using what technology is out there to help us enhance relationships rather than work in a transactional way. In particular, I'm interested in how we're framing and using the wealth of data that recruitment firms hold, because I don't see anyone doing that at all. And I don't see any technology firms making it easy to do that either.
CRM companies might disagree with that to a certain degree, Bill.
They'd be talking rubbish, really, Mark, if I'm honest.
So what is it you want to see, Bill? What do you think is the game changer to fix that particular problem?
Well, I think if you look at it, probably the best example that I've seen from an RPO point of view is from AMS, and Adam Lawrence has built a global data center where they're working much more on really strategic consultancy with clients rather than purely candidate introduction. And if you think about all the data that's held within a recruitment, a traditional CRM recruitment database, whatever you want to call it, there's so much information which is only really being used and being mined in terms of, we have this job, let's search and see if we've got a candidate, let's present the candidate. When in fact, if we started thinking about it as a CRM as a whole data center, you could provide so much strategic client advice. You could know where people should be recruiting, what level they should be recruiting at, and more importantly, you could present it back with hard data and in nice pictures that people understand. And I'd like to see, I know Dan McGuire's done a lot of work with data presentation, but that's really still driven almost in a saber type way from a sales point of view for consultants. I think we should be going a lot further with that. And it's going to become more and more important the more that agencies are becoming really luxuries rather than necessity in the current market.
So it's Alan. Where do we sit with this? So if you think about the people that are going to participate at the event, have a quick look at the vendors, companies that are supporting the event, a bunch of candidate management, applicant tracking, whatever we want to call them, systems these days. A couple of the technologies, Burning Glass, how do we make it better? A video, a couple socials. We still have, in my view, the same old, same old. It doesn't matter. Yes, there's new twists and there's new versions, but we're still talking about all of these cool tools and potentially cool tools. And it seems to me what we're not having that conversation with much Bill and the others is, what is my business supposed to be doing? What's my basics of recruiting? Have I gotten so wrapped up about thinking about the new tool I can put in that I've forgotten about how to actually do recruitment? And I start buying my tools based on what's the cheapest one I can get, because I'm not actually using all of its functionality, so does it really matter?
Alan, I'm so loving how you've led into my session on Tuesday afternoon, but that's all I'll say.
Yeah, well, that was the whole point, Lisa, setting you up.
I'd agree with both of you, Alan and Bill. I think I'd like to see 20% of our technology being used. That would be fantastic. I just see more and more often the consultants going back to their old tools and still using Outlook and spreadsheets and things like that. It's still happening far too often for my liking. But I kind of despair with the whole recruitment industry.
That's Bill and Google effects, isn't it?
I didn't know there were that many people on the Hangout.
I just thought it was a really good point that deserved applause.
I despair with the current recruitment industry because I just don't see them really taking off and bringing any of these cool tools, any way of integrating them into the core CRMs.
I think that's because we call them cool tools, and I'm really sorry, but the recruitment industry is not cool. It's practical. It's needed. And I think I personally, when I hear the term cool tools, I think bad thoughts. I think it's about practical application. It could be a cool tool to us, but to a recruiter, for me to go into a managing director and say I've got the best cool tool ever, they'll just fire me. I think it has to be a practical application.
That's all right, Lisa, because they'll give me a call. Because I'm getting asked about. I'm asked and sent mails on a daily basis about what's cool at the moment, what's cool in the industry. So I think part of the problem is that everything we're looking at, we look in a very one-dimensional candidate sourcing, candidate delivery way in terms of how do we do the job right now, and we need to be looking a bit further. We need to be looking a bit further about how we're using technology. I don't think there's anything wrong with things being cool at the moment.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with things being cool. I think it's just badging it as cool will turn the average. I'm not going to go into demographics, but the average recruitment director doesn't want cool, they want working. And I think the challenge is that we introduced the concept of cool in. It's like the concept of social media 3 years ago wound everybody up because they don't want to be social, they want to do practical stuff. So I think it's about what you and I would consider tool is absolutely fantastic, but it has to be practical and it has to be applied and it has to be measured. And IT departments want to be safe when they're rolling this stuff out. And I
know, Peter, you are an IT department. What do you think?
I think our consultants need to consult, and they need to have the tools to be able to do that, and they need the communication mechanism that everyone else is using at the moment. And I don't see any of that realistically being applied to any of the bigger CRMs that we would look at as part of our requirement.
I don't think there's a replacement for consulting in recruitment, but the tools that can save time in administration is where the obvious advantages are to the recruitment owner and director. But there is a challenge with this. I mean, we are using ITRIS, and ITRIS is in-house software, and we had to integrate Burning Glass so that we could have parsing working with ITRIS, and that's taken nearly 6 months to get the integration complete and working effectively. And that wasn't unfortunately blamed to either one party or the other, but the complexity of having 3 parties all wanting to try and get this system to work in a certain way has proved to be a massive headache and a long-term challenge.
Isn't that the problem though? Can everyone hear me?
Hello, welcome.
Too many systems that aren't actually linked together, and current CRM systems are totally out of date. I mean, I remember when I worked at Hayes, there's a friend of mine who still gets sort of mail shotted now from Hayes as a credit controller when he was on 15k, and he's now a project director for a big bank. That it's keeping the systems up to date and keeping them actually working together. It's not having the cool tools, it's making the tools actually work in some kind of way together. At the moment, it's very, very hard and very expensive to do that, and consultants get distracted by having too many different things at their disposal.
BYOD hasn't helped because everyone's got the cool tools on their iPad or phone, so they want those kind of tools in the office now.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing, what I'm seeing quite a lot is actually whenever we get something new, and whenever new initiatives come into the industry, or we try and take things from outside of perhaps the traditional recruiting industry, we're still using them in the same way to deliver the same model. It's still very much about let's go and find some CVs. Let's use exactly what you've said. You know, still emailing people saying, "We've got this 15 grand credit control job now that you're a director of finance." So I think the responsibility is in 2 parts really. One is for the technology providers to be developing capability of what we want to do, but the other one is within the business to move on from really a 1980s model, just replicating. I mean, I still see most of what I see within the recruitment CRMs, within the databases, whatever you want to call it, is that they're largely being used as a giant filing cabinet. None of that data is being used for anything other than we have a job, let's go and search and see whose job title matches.
Can you give us some examples, Bill, of how you think a database could be used?
Yeah, I mean, without giving away too many of Louis' secrets, because I work quite closely with Louis on what colleagues should be doing, but I think very, very simply, there's 2 things. One is if you know the location of data, you can keep your data up to date. And you can keep it up to date in real time. Because we still very much run our systems around an old methodology, which meant if somebody and I worked around the business for about 30 years, before fax machines really. So when you think about it, in the old days, what used to happen was if you wanted to work with me, you had to provide me with some data. That data was a CV. I filed that CV or application form somewhere, and that record stayed as your record. And in order for me to update it or change it or make it more current, you had to provide me with an update. You either had to come ring me, you had to come and see me, but you had to give me the information. You don't need to do that anymore because people leave data everywhere. So once I've got your details of where your LinkedIn profile is, your Facebook, any of your Twitter stuff, your Stack Overflow profile, whatever it is, I should be importing all of that data to make sure the information I hold on you and what I search on is real time as of today, not as of the day that you gave it to me. And then I need to start thinking about how I use that data. So that's one way. The other way is in terms of clients. You know, when a client comes to you and says, right, this is what I'm looking for, if we actually used all the data that we hold, even think about it, you know, if you've got, I don't know, 500,000 candidate records in your database going back however many years or inside your CRM, you can provide real quality data to a client to say, this is the average salary range, this is the kind of rate, here's a data map that shows you where those candidates are located, this is the probability of you filling that job on who's in the market at the moment, this is a talent map of what's about. We hold all that data in the database. We just never use it for that. We never use it for anything other than let's actually put people into the database, and then when we have a job, we'll go search for them. And so if we could see, if we looked at what happens in the world outside of recruitment and said, actually, let's see how forget about let's look at how people are using data to be much more predictive about what's going on, predictive analytics, everything else, and able to actually consult and advise their clients on what they should be doing, and using evidence instead of opinion, then I think the industry would be in a much stronger position.
So, Phil, are you saying then, in terms of where the recruitment industry needs to go, is more like kind of retail in terms of the way that they predict buying habits through
absolutely
through trapping data as you're going along? But I mean, what you're saying is using social data rather than shopping data.
Well, yeah, using all data in exactly the same way. If you look at it as customer patterns, you can do all kinds of things from you know, predictive analytics. If you look at some of the assessment tools, which are not even kind of sit-down tests that are coming out at the moment from some of the startups, you can predict when people are looking for jobs. You know what type of job they're looking for. You can see what their background is. You can get a whole kind of cultural match. You can measure what's going on. You can measure what you can look at by tracking. For instance, we've got an experiment going on at the moment, which is based around culture, where we're actually able to measure the social media outputs of close to about 90% of the employees for about 200 companies globally. From that, we're able to understand their culture properly and understand what would be a good fit for them. This is not complicated use of data, which makes you much more effective from a consultative point of view. And I really think we're in a position in the recruitment industry globally where we're no longer necessary. I think we were necessary for a long time. I don't think we're necessary anymore. I think we're really a luxury acquisition for people to go out. So we need to get a lot more strategic and a lot cleverer about what it is we're selling and what we're doing. The best place to start that is say, okay, let's have a look at the data we hold and use it for something different. When I started out in recruitment, this is what we used to do. If you gave me a CV, I stuck it in a filing cabinet and I closed that filing cabinet. When the filing cabinet was full, I went and bought another one. And when all the filing cabinets were full, we reinforced the floor to make sure it didn't fall through. And we never once opened the filing cabinet and looked inside to see what we had. I don't see people doing anything any different, except that it's online now. And I'm talking 30 years ago.
So, Bill, I think you're right in terms of we've just automated the filing cabinet. We haven't actually, in the most part, and if you look at what the system started out for, we called them applicant tracking systems for a reason. They were just managing admin. And I'll bet if you ask Peter right now, how many people in his building do more than actually manage their diary and a bit of contact information in their systems, it probably wouldn't be a very high number, would it, Peter?
No, it's very true, Alan.
So we can talk about all the new technology and the updated technology. And look, you know, when I started selling ATSs 15 years ago, there had already been systems for the recruitment consultants for 10 years before that. So we've had this technology available to use to make our business better as recruiters for 25 years. And yet, I'm sure that if we looked at Louise's forums, every single day, there's somebody puts up a question which says, what's the best ATS for me to use? Or what can I do to make Outlook work better for my recruitment system? Or how do I get Salesforce.com to work? And I'm sure that drives Louis' colleagues absolutely nuts. At colleague, no real pun intended there. You know,
I hunt them down.
Yeah, it's not that tough, guys. It's not a tough business. You know, we have great technology. Our challenge is getting the owner-operators of businesses to actually enforce using it on their recruiters.
The problem is, though, to be fair, that the most owner-managers or most even directors of recruitment businesses didn't use that technology when they were starting out in the recruitment world. So for them, it's a very alien concept. So although the recruitment process hasn't changed, the environment in which they are now managing their staff has changed radically, and that for me is the sweet spot in terms of recruitment agencies, is getting the directors of those firms to engage at that level. And the only engagement a lot of recruitment directors seem to have these days is at the purchasing level. And they buy it, they tick a box, they put it on a shelf, and then they move on to the next purchase. And I think that's the biggest challenge at the moment, to get people to use these cool tools, or whatever they're called, is to get the directors to understand how to use them before they're inflicted on the workforce.
And I'm hoping, Lisa, that that's one of the things which you'll help to cover when we do this session. We've added this new pre-event session about the CRMs and choosing and using CRMs. And it's hopefully quite an informal session, so people will have a chance to chat with you about some of the challenges they have as directors of businesses in making the right decisions.
I think one of the problems I think we have, and this applies to a lot of technology, is that a lot of the providers are providing what they're being asked for rather than adding in what could be possible. You know, so it's back to the old Henry Ford thing, where when he invented the car, they said, "Well, if I would have asked the customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses." And I think that's what's happening. I think there's kind of a shared responsibility. One is to help educate the industry in terms of how we think about ourselves and how we use data and mobile and all the other new stuff that's going on. And the second, and that's a whole different discussion we haven't even got into yet. But the second bit is to actually start showing people what is possible that they can't imagine yet, because they've only ever known the one way of working.
Lisa, were you going to say something more there, just about what you're going to be talking about at the event?
Well, there's two. There's am I allowed to say I'm topping and tailing, Louise? Is that appropriate? Being tagged onto the beginning as well. So basically, I get lots of recruitment directors wanting to understand, yeah, you're putting me in a room with all these vendors. What am I looking for? How can I make a strategic decision? What's it going to look like? How much time is it going to take? So the session in the morning, which is around 11:30, is very informal, talking about the challenges that they're going to face when they start implementing this new technology, that all the things that Louisa said. I'm obviously looking forward to that. And then at the end of the day, around the 4:30 mark, we're going to be looking at cool, Bill, don't worry, it's going to be cool. They're all going to be cool tools, but they're also going to be really practical.
You stick with your boring if you like, point them out as boring. That's absolutely fine, Lisa. So here's some boring stuff you can look at.
Well, if you want to badge it as boring, I'm absolutely fine with that, but ultimately it's going to be very practical and very strategic and exciting at the same time, but also very sensitive to the fact that there's a business process that recruiters have to follow here. And if we give them too much tech, the process just crumbles. And we need to keep very sensitive to the fact that everyone has dual screens now, albeit I might have 2 PC screens, or I might have a phone screen and a PC. The distraction opportunities in the recruitment world are now humongous. And ultimately, the process hasn't changed. So we need to just get recruiters re-engaged in the process. And that's my piece on Tuesday. I'm going to mute now.
So technology needs to, Bill's saying technology needs to get more advanced. We need to start using data. CRMs need to start managing all the online data and giving you algorithms and results and starting to engage with that data. But Pete was mentioning, Lisa's mentioning that recruiters aren't even using the sort of basic foundations of a CRM fully at the moment. Is that about right? Really, what we've been discussing so far? Is there any more input on that, especially the second and the sort of the element of the processes and the strategy of using technology at recruitment agency and getting that right?
I wouldn't say that in our business that we struggle to get the consultants to use the CRM, but I think the CRM is so central to everything that the recruiter does that if the challenge, I mean, the sort of stuff that Bill talked about, I couldn't even envisage how we would start to go about trying to use that data in the sort of ways that he referred to, other than applying pressure perhaps to the CRM company themselves to say we want it to do this. And even considering moving from one CRM product to another is just such a mammoth task. That gives me a headache just thinking about it.
I mean, Bill, you're almost in a way saying technology companies sort of need to lead, but don't they really need to adapt to the recruitment process? Or
no, I think it's a combination of the two. I think you need to be. I think you need to. There's 3 areas really where I think technology providers could do a lot more in many sectors. One is actually showing what's possible from what's already there, and a lot of everything that I'm talking about, and we've talked about this quite a few times. Everything I'm talking about in terms of data analysis and presentation is very possible in an existing CRM with just a little bit of work from the providers. So I think the first thing is showing people what's possible and how it can be used. You know, being able to turn out being able to turn data into pictures so you can go and talk to clients properly about what's really happening in the market and what's going on. It is one area. So I think actually adding the functionality and showing people how to use it. The second one is actually more ongoing training. I think one of the problems with technology is that really training needs to be current, and it's not. It's generally bought at setup stage. You go and do a 2-day course with Bond, Adapt, Colic, whoever it is. You go and do your 2-day course, and that's the total training you get, and you forget about half the functions. So I think there's also a responsibility to be doing a lot more about showing people what's possible and what can be done through education. And I think the providers really need to work hard on that. And the other one is I think we need to be thinking beyond the industry as it is today and what potentially it's going to become over the next 2 to 3 years. And I don't see that. I still see very much the concentration is on this is the business process, it's delivering candidates. Anything else is going to be too much of a distraction to what we do day to day. Let's just let's ignore it. I think that's what I'd like to see a lot more of in terms of education, and actually show people how easy it would be rather than how complicated it is.
But Bill, I think you're right, the training issue, and they may get that training because it came with the initial pack, but certainly my experience has been that what happens afterwards is there's no refresher training.
But look at the way
companies are afraid to spend the money.
Alan, look at the way training's delivered, right?
Yeah.
Training is generally delivered in the recruitment industry, in a classroom. I know because I was a trainer for a long time.
Yeah.
In a classroom where people pay a lot of money, sit down, and that doesn't matter whether it's sales training, management training, or anything else. How much is really being done to develop anything other than the basic level training online. Things like, you know, setting up something like a code academy. And John would be the best person to talk about how easy that would be to do. Setting up a code academy where recruiters could go in and actually learn their system on an ongoing basis and have things like training wikis for resources and all kinds of stuff.
Well, no, I agree, Bill. I think there's a lot of different things you can be doing with training. Apple Learn TV up out of Manchester have got a brilliant system to embed into a software product, so it's learning on the go. The videos are there. But I think the bigger challenge, and any of us that have tried to sell to those owner-operators will probably find out, is they bought a block of training that came when they put the system in, and you come back and say, look, every 3 to 6 months you should have some refresher training. You got new consultants in. All your consultants who were originally trained forgot everything you taught them, as you said. And you never get that second or third tranche of training back into the business because that just is seen as an expense. And I think
it is an expense, Alan. Isn't there a responsibility with the providers to provide to price their product right, rather than getting involved in a price war, and to actually provide lifelong training as long as you use the product and lifelong updates to make sure you've always got the latest version?
I think that's a great idea. I tried to sell at Resmix training blocks. I couldn't get anybody to buy the training block because all they wanted was the put it in training and then leave me alone.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, the only time as somebody buying technology, you have, and Lisa is the expert in this, the only time you have any power is when you're doing the buying.
Yep.
Once you've done the buying, you've signed the contract, you're stuck with what you've got. So that's the time to start negotiating to say, if we're going to choose you over you, let's talk about the support, let's talk about the training, let's talk about what else you're going to give us, rather than just, give us the CRM at the cheapest possible price.
But maybe the SaaS or cloud model is going to help with that anyway over time, because, I mean, obviously when you get lovely systems like Broadbean, you can obviously interact with training on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and this is the irony that the training is freely available with Broadbean. I'm not plugging it, by the way, I just like their model, and at the end of the day I can, as a recruiter, go onto their website, look at their webinar program and make myself responsible. The challenge is that there's not enough time in a recruiter's typical day to actually have that refresher training, or worse, the average recruiter is very unlikely to admit that they need help in those areas.
They're also not allowed to. You know, the point is that a lot of recruitment, and this is one of the dated areas, is recruitment businesses still view training. I sold it for a long time and did it for a long time. Recruiters still view training as you have to go sit in a classroom, be told by someone, this is what you have to do. There's no real development in kind of the social training. There's a few people who've put videos online. You know, Johnny Campbell's done is beginning to do some good stuff in the sourcing area, although it's just sourcing, with My Social Talent at the right kind of price. But there's so much that could be done, you know, with a code academy type structure, easy stuff like that, where people could learn technology instead of just delivering the same old model.
Is that the format you would see it like, Bill? Like Johnny Campbell's one with the online
it could be
video calls?
That's a part of the mix, which is interacting with videos and other stuff. Juice also are doing a little bit with the training stuff, with their recruitment version of The Office, I suppose. But actually a lot more of even simple things like setting up a recruiter wiki where you can put resources. When I started out in the recruitment business, right, I remember my boss telling me on my first day, every day I want you to read the newspaper. And I said, why do you want me to read a newspaper? He said, because I want you to know what's going on in the world so you can talk to people and so you understand things a bit more. All of that stuff is available online now and free, but recruiters aren't allowed to plug into it, and we're not making it easy to deliver knowledge and learning and best ways to use the system. So, you know, I just think we need to do a lot more in that area. And that's one of the things that, you know, at a technology conference, we should be challenging the vendors on.
Maybe you're more in touch with a wider spread of recruitment companies than what I am, because certainly within our company, all our guys are tapped into the leading online publications. They've got RSS feeds coming through to their inboxes. They're connecting so they can push that information out into their talent pools that they're connected to on LinkedIn. So in your experience, Bill, are you saying that most of the recruitment companies aren't taking advantage of the readily available information that's out there about their vertical niche specialist marketplace?
Using very little of it, but not being allowed time. Not being allowed time to just sit and read content and look at things that are useful. I mean, for half of them, half the sources of the content are blocked anyway.
Scary.
Right.
So-
Sorry, Alan. Go on. We can't hear you.
Mark, let's try that again.
Yeah.
Right, Mark, when you hire a new recruiter, do you ask them if they've used your the system that you've got?
Yes, we ask them if they've used a CRM before, what training they've had. We've got a specific defined process at F10, right from the point of initial conversation with the client when a job comes in, right through to final delivery, and we've got checkpoints that we can actually monitor, so we can see if the consultants are actually following that process as well. So we audit about once every couple of months, pick a couple of jobs, choose a job where they've actually got candidates to interview, and then basically reverse engineer right back through the process to make sure we can tick all the boxes to show that they are using the system properly. And that just keeps us real. We can see where there are training needs. Just to come back on another point that was made earlier, most of the technology products that we're working with, we are unlicensed with. So I know there's a lot of power of negotiation at the start when you first purchase the service, but you are paying on an ongoing basis. So these people will send people out to do training if you actually need it. But finding an ambassador in-house is probably a preferred option, which is what we do. We try to sort of pick one person to take one particular product. So we've got one person that's a LinkedIn person, and we'll allow them to have access to stuff that's going on about LinkedIn and develop their skills and their knowledge, and then encourage them to do a little workshop at lunchtime with the other people to show them the tools that they've found that can help them to be a better recruiter.
I think you're quite unusual, Mark, though, or maybe other people would claim that you're unusual, but I look at the average recruitment business, process mapping for them is not necessarily on the agenda, although it inevitably becomes. People are only going to get trained when they think they don't know enough. We've already said, for example, Pete would be happy, quote, tweet, unquote, with 20% of the tools being used. I'm going to use that if that's okay. IT director says he would be happy if only 20% was being used. And I think that it's important that we remember that the average recruitment business does not have a business process map. And in fact, actually, in my experience, if they did, they'd probably have 20 or 30. And as a result of that, because they don't have a business process map, they don't actually see the gap between the process and the system, and therefore they don't need any training because they don't understand that there is a training need. That would be my view.
It was a painful experience when we actually put our process in place, and it took probably nearly 12 months to get documented every single aspect in the way that we wanted it done. Can
I ask you a question on that, actually, Mark? How often do you change that process? How often is it reviewed and things change?
You can't change the entire process at any one time, but you can take a section of the process. Yeah. So let's say it was candidate qualification. So we've got some documentation on how we would train and educate a consultant to go about the way that they consult with a candidate. And if we became aware of better techniques or improvements to the way that we did that, we will update that particular aspect of it.
So how often is that actual? So how often would you say in the last? And I'm not trying to pick on you for this particular one, but in the last 12 months, how often have you actually amended your process?
All the time.
Right. So it's getting amended like weekly and monthly.
Yeah, I mean, if let's say we were doing a training session on business development techniques, and I'd read something that somebody else was presented, maybe Gavin Ingham for someone like that, and I thought that's really good, we'll incorporate that into it. I just go to the document and just add it in, and there's a point of adding it in. I'll probably read the entire document and just update it as we go. And likewise with some of the other managers in the business, if they're using the documents that we've got.
Yeah, and is it largely paper-based document rather than something that's online?
It's stored on the H drive within the service, yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you have any tracking to see how many people actually look at a document once you've updated it?
I'm sorry.
Because with e-learning and stuff like that.
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Do you have any tracking to check when someone's looked at the document?
Yes, every time the document's updated, there's a date stamp on it.
But do you do anything to check if people are actually reading the updated document?
Well, the document's used more from delivering training, so I wouldn't expect some of the more junior consultants to go in and just access it themselves unless we'd actually told them to do so. And if I wanted somebody to read a specific document, I'd just go and get it and email it to them.
Yeah, so it's still largely a delivered training rather than a developmental learning. For example, people going in and learning their own stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've got our core documents through the process, and then, of course, there's additional stuff which is sort of changing all the time. So LinkedIn's a great example because LinkedIn's changing the way that it works, its format, and there's new stuff that's coming out as to how you can use it to identify and engage with candidates all the time. So whoever's the ambassador for that particular part of what we do, they would probably call a workshop if they thought something good had come forward.
Mark, do you run any metrics against the processes about how they're being applied in real time in the business?
We monitor against basic conversions, and then we'll look at the detail to see if we can sort of identify where things are going wrong or can be improved. But there's not a specific, algorithm that we're working to.
Right.
What would you mean by what metrics? What's an example of what you were thinking about?
Against process completion, workflow, and things like that, are fields being completed correctly when they get to the end of the process and make the offer and the placement?
Yeah, absolutely. It's only done on an ad hoc basis because you can't monitor every single sort of action that's put onto the system. But as I said, we'll pick each consultant a couple of jobs where they've got candidates to interview or offer, and then look at the notes on the system for the candidate and the job to track that each different sort of element of the process was at least documented on the system. It doesn't guarantee that it was done because you can still, you could put on there that I did a pre-interview discussion with a candidate or a post-interview evaluation with a candidate and not have actually done it.
This is part of, Mark, this is part of what I'm talking about, and I'm glad you're saying it. I'm getting an echo from somewhere. I don't know if anyone else is. But one of the points I would say is that, and I think I know FTech Group, and I know you're pretty advanced in what you're doing. But very much when we're saying we can't track everything, when you want to check something or interrogate something, you have to physically go and do that. It's an action that you're doing, something extra you're doing in the system. When I'm talking about what the opportunities are for CRM companies is actually, if LinkedIn can track every single click that their millions of users can do and instantly provide me with reports through what they call Merlin data of exactly what's happening in all of LinkedIn at any one time, and I can interrogate it on any question that I want, then really your CRM providers should be giving you the capability to do that. So you shouldn't have to go in and do an investigation. We should be identifying, right, if this is the process, what are we tracking? What are we returning? What are we reporting? Now, the actual systems are very capable of doing that because every time anyone clicks or enters anything, there is a data footprint. That's what I mean by I don't think we really use all of the data and all of the actions that are going on in the system in an intelligent way. And I'd like to see some companies start making it a lot easier for users by saying, right, we'll generate you the right reports, or we'll show you the right pictures, we'll create the right to help you do that without you needing to physically do it.
Yeah, some of the reporting functionality is there, but there's a lot of gaps that you have to fill in manually.
Yeah, I just think they make it too hard for you when it could be easy. And we could go so much further with the data we hold, going as far as when I was talking earlier, being able to really inform and educate clients and candidates on what's happening in the market, because we're actually analysing all of the data that's going into the system every time we talk to clients, take a job, get a CV in. All of that is data which could be collected and used for good.
I love the idea of being able to run a report for a particular skill set and actually being able to look at a geographic sort of demographic of where those people are based, and then perhaps being able to dig deeper to look at sort of what average salaries are, and that sort of information would be very powerful if you were having a
But that is not a difficult data analysis because you've already got the data there and you've got it there in a reasonably structured way. It's just that everything that we're thinking about within recruitment businesses is still purely, really, 90%, 99% built around transactional delivery day to day, rather than actually where can we go, what can we actually do with this data now we've got it? Because everything that's in your database would tell a fantastic story. No, what do you think, Peter? You understand data and systems architecture better than any of us.
I don't know on that one. I'd like to see the analytics extending out beyond just our own corporate data and being able to access client data, government data, whatever it is, and really go the whole big data analytics solution and really start getting some meaningful information and useful knowledge out of all the data that's out there. Align that with everything that we have, and we could do some pretty serious consulting work for a lot of our clients.
And that's what I mean. That's where I think when we're looking at recruitment businesses, that's where suddenly you're able to say, we know enough to be able to provide value. We can provide real value here, and we can back up the things we're talking about with evidence rather than opinion. I'm not saying the opinion is wrong, but we can, for me, big data is all about how can we turn all this information into a nice picture that is very simple for someone to understand. I mean, John, you're the expert in data and systems. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think from what people have been saying earlier, the key task is actually to take the data that you've got and then make it easier for people to view. And that's going to be the job of the CRMs going forward, because people have got the data and it's then got to be put out. So if someone looks at a company, bring a word cloud of what all their people in the company are doing, saying on Twitter, or things like that. So you can just take a look at a company, and then you just from glancing at the page, you get an idea of what they're talking about within the company. You can then expand that out to use Facebook, things like that, and then you're all bringing data in, and say you can take one view of a company as a whole. You can make charts showing the average salary that the people that you've placed at that company, or companies in that area. If you've got the postcode, we could put maps. You could put pins on a map and then show what the average salary is at that company.
And you can talent mapping. There's just so much we can do with the data that we hold. We just don't, because we're still concentrating on. I see Raymond's in here, so he may want to jump in and join something. It is actually, there's so much more we could do with the data that we have, and I actually think there's part of a education piece from the technology providers to start showing some of this and saying, look, this is the story you can tell. Here's some dummy reports, here's some stuff. You don't have to interrogate it, we make it all available in real time.
Yeah. It's what we're looking at going forward. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, I interviewed Rena Gupta from the U.S., from Target Recruit in the U.S., and she runs a couple other businesses. And that's a big theme that she's seeing really driving the success of the CRM systems in the U.S. is doing the analysis. Everybody's had data coming up there, forever. But without doing the data, and then, as Jonathan was saying, putting it in a report format and a structure that makes it easy for the recruiter to actually to use. We've run through years of building out all these wonderful reports that you need to have a PhD in order to be able to figure out what they're all about. It's getting those reports now, analyzing, and then putting them into a format that it's easy for the recruiter to have a quick look at, or the team leader, or the owner-operator to look at it. And so I see where my money is coming from. I see it's the value of that recruiter and the conversations he has.
Alan, what I've got to jump in on is everything we're talking about is still using data in a day-to-day operational role. This is where the money's coming from. This is the placements. I'd like to see it moving into a much broader, being used in a much broader way, so that actually recruitment consultants can get back to being consultancy businesses rather than being CV deliverers.
So I think that would be almost the oxymoron of our industry over these years, is calling them recruitment consultants, when most of them, to be fair, have not actually been consultants. They have just been, turn the cards. And I agree with you, Bill. That's the real value. And
but there's opportunities to do
brand.
that. There's opportunities
Absolutely.
to do that. The data's there to go out and do it. So, the data is there. It's just looking at how we use that, thinking about how we use that data, rather than saying, okay, let's go and have a look at all the CRMs at Lisa's event and just see which one could deliver a CV the fastest, or which one can hold the most records.
I also think there's a whole load of engagement and work that goes on around the business that's never ever captured into the CRM. If you think of all the engagement that goes on in LinkedIn and across all the groups and things, I don't believe there's any, or I don't know of any CRMs that are able to capture all that data.
Yeah, it's called LinkedIn.
Well,
yeah, this is it.
Probably not.
The value of the CRM is continuing to be reduced all the time.
Just to throw in something and see if you can hear me. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you, Ro.
All right, good. That's all right. I've spent ages trying to make the voice thing work. Where all that lives, Peter, is you need to control the desktop, and then once you control the desktop, along with our integrated phones, you've got the desktop logs. So once you've got everybody running through a hosted desktop, we'll use Citrix as an example. Citrix then knows what you've done all day, every part of the day. The challenging bit is using those logs to provide the pictures that Bill was speaking about. Somebody will do it, because the data's there. We're tracking every keystroke, every move of the mouse, every second that somebody's in a page or in a window or in Excel or looking in the shopping channels. We know all of that. It's just about taking those logs, normalising them and providing a pretty picture, like Bill said.
Yeah, what I see, Raymond, is the only thing generally the recruitment industry is interested in using that capability for is to make sure no one's looking at porn or shopping when they're supposed to be on the phone getting calls out, rather than actually saying, how can we use this data, A, to be able to work on our business process instead of being policemen to see what's actually working for us, and B, to be able to educate our clients and candidates, because now we hold all this information, we can use it effectively in the way that many other businesses are doing, many other sectors are doing.
We just haven't managed to grab it all, put it in a shape that we can do something with, and then start making it predictive. There's enough things out there that'll guide you to what's the next best thing to do, but whether they actually prove that it's the next best thing to do, and have the little pop-up reminders in Chrome to say, right guys, this is what you should be doing next, because remember you've got an A-grade job that you've only sent 2 CVs to, so you better get the third one in, and you better do it in the next 10 minutes.
Louis, maybe you want to say something from a colleague point of view and talk a little bit about where we're going with that.
Louis is too busy typing to talk at this moment, it appears.
Sorry, I'm forgetting to unmute on. Yeah, sorry. I think the bit that I'm interested in is where CRMs are sort of bridging the gap between using the data in the system and using that well, and big data and engaging with that data, and actually moving to managing all the information online as well. So it's not just a place where you store your company data. It's a management system for all the activities of an online recruiter, and moving towards something like Pete was talking about, where it's recording when you tweet someone, when you engage with someone on LinkedIn, when you're engaging on Google, providing the analytics like Social Grow does.
Louis, if we could do that in a conventional ATS or middleware from a corporate recruiting point of view, why can't we do it from an agency point of view? We can, we just don't.
We can do it. We
just don't.
Agency CRMs haven't got there yet, admittedly. I think that's where they're going to go, though, hopefully. It will start to move up beyond the sort of automated filing cabinet, as it was described as. Yeah, that's the area I'm interested in, though. And that's I think been one of the main discussions, really. And does John, do you have anything more to throw in on from a colleague perspective on that?
No, not particularly. One thing people talk about the big data. I'm just wondering, do you think we've reached the limits of what people are going to be storing online with data? Because you've got the Prism thing happening in America, which has got people worried, and Facebook profiles seem to be reducing in number, and there are people on LinkedIn, particularly IT professionals, who are actually stripping back their profiles because fed up recruiters calling them.
There is that.
People think that's going to happen.
There is that, John, but actually I don't think people are not storing data. I just think they're storing it in different places. And they're doing different things. So what they're not doing is creating online profiles because they don't want to be found. They're still creating the data, you know, from a technology point of view. There's so much going on in Stack Overflow and GitHub and other places that actually it's looking wider and looking beyond LinkedIn, really.
We were talking about LinkedIn in the office actually the other day, and talking about how you know, they're moving on the sort of CRM market and recruitment market. They can't be that management hub. If developers are going to be moving away from LinkedIn because recruiters are contacting a lot, we're going to have to look at ways, like Bill mentioned, where you're plugging into Stack Overflow, you're plugging into other communities.
Yeah, and you're going to see punitive things happening there fairly soon. You know, there's going to be LinkedIn are going to have to take punitive measures on that against people who behave unsociably. They've already started it in groups in terms of how they penalise people. I think that's the next stage, because remember, they know exactly what your message is and what the response is and how much it's getting open. So you're going to see a lot more punitive things happening in LinkedIn, which is going to change behaviours for sure. Because they have to, otherwise people will just hide their data, which takes their value away.
Mm.
That's a whole different discussion, which is in my next white paper, which is coming out soon. So we'll leave that one. Should be ready for next week.
What's the white paper you're bringing on Tuesday, Bill? Just while I remember to plug that.
It's LinkedIn for recruiting agencies, but it is not a training manual, and it's going to be very different, as I suppose you'd expect from things that you might have read before.
Okay.
I've done a lot of experimenting over the last 6 months with the contacts function, because I've had that for 6 months to play around with. So I've been doing that in 1 or 2 other areas that I'm going to be talking about, and where I think LinkedIn is going, and where I think agencies need to go with that. And it's things like the punitive action on messaging, which I think is something that's going to happen.
Okay, I think we've pretty much done an hour now, so sorry, Raymond, you join us right at the end. Maybe we can organise something for another time.
I'll be a bit more organised next time.
Not at all. Thanks for joining, everyone. So if any recruiters watching or still watching are interested in the event, it's next Tuesday. The information is all on the Colleague Recruitment blog. Lisa will be there. Lisa will be talking about you know, recruitment process, strategy, so forth. As she mentioned, Alan will be there talking about implementing recruitment software. Bill will be there at the colleague stand. Colleague will be there. If you'd like
can I just tell you what my evening bar raconteur talk is?
The secret event. Yeah.
No, my evening bar raconteur event is entitled "Everything You Know Is Wrong." So come along for that. Okay, and Pete, are you coming along?
Yeah, I'll be there. Looking forward to it. It's going to be good.
Raymond, Mark, I don't know if you'll be there or.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
I'll have a look.
Okay. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Hopefully we can do a big hangout again sometime. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, Louis.
Bye-bye.